What a pastor shared with me back home. He said, "Mark, the first thing I do is encourage new believers to share this good news of the gospel with others." He wanted them to do that before they discovered that a lot of Christians don't share their faith. And this thought comes to my mind while I'm standing there with all these new believers. So right in the middle of all this rejoicing, I asked some of the guys, "When are you going to go and tell other villages about this good news?" Well, everything goes quiet. So I asked him again. This one guy, Mendo, speaks up and says, "Yeah, we'll go, but we don't have a clue as how to go about it." And everyone is saying, "Yeah, we'll go," real enthused. So I said, "That's all I want to know. I'll show you how." It was so refreshing to be around these new believers. Their faith was so simple. With the new honesty that existed among the people, a lot of relationships could now be mended that the old deceit had kept broken. Husbands began to show more love and concern for their wives. They stopped deceiving them. And wife-beating became a thing of the past. Before, the men had spent a lot of time in the man house, often doing things leading to trouble. Now they began to spend more time with their wives. They began to take more responsibility for the children. These were good things, big changes. And of course, they were talking of taking this good message to the other villages. In that first week after they became believers, these three guys showed up from a neighboring village and asked us if we would come and teach them.
These guys have light in their eyes, but our eyes are just darkness. When we look into each other's eyes, we see nothing but darkness. But when we look into the eyes of these ones that have been taught, we see light. We want that light.
Well, these guys began showing up every week, begging for us to come and teach them. So I thought, here's the opportunity for men from my village to learn to teach. The basic steps were like this. The second village we went to, I did all the teaching and they helped me. What that really stood out was this. The new believers saw the way I was teaching was exactly the same as they had been taught. A to B, B to C, one step at a time. All the way through, it was the same story. Well, that really got the believers from the first village excited. So I began to get different ones of them to help me teach. They were pretty scared at first, but they did very well, and with time, they gained confidence. The third village we taught at, they did all the teaching, and I helped them. I told the people that I would not be teaching them, but rather the believers from the first village would be doing the teaching. Well, the folks in village 3 didn't know how they felt about that. They didn't want the moke teacher. They weren't sure if they would tell the story right. I told them that the moke teachers would teach exactly the same message. Well, they still wanted me to teach, but I told them that was impossible, as I was only one man and could not be in so many places at one time. It would have to be a moke teacher or no one. There was no one else who could do it. Well, that changed their mind real fast. And that's the way it worked out. The moke from the first village did all the teaching, and I just helped them out. In the fourth village, the moke believers did all the teaching themselves, and I just watched.
This is now extended to 12 villages.
Yes, and from the fourth village on, all the teaching was done by the moke teachers. One of the biggest keys to the success of the multiplication of the teaching has been our literacy program. My wife Gloria developed this. The hunger for the Word of God can be exceedingly great, but if you don't have men and women who can read the Bible, then you don't have equipped teachers, and that means you have a problem. As fast as I've been able to translate material, we have run it off on the laser printer and made multiple photocopies. My daughter Nicole has often been involved with this. And we put it into the hands of the people. There's a lot more motivation for a person to learn to read if he has a variety of things to read. As we have developed literate people, we have encouraged them to write their own tribal stories in their language, and we've made those available as well. In all, we'd go through around 8,000 sheets of paper every month. Now, as these teachers went out to various new villages, it wasn't easy for them. We sometimes think that it is easier for indigenous tribal teachers, missionaries if you will, to leave their homes, but that's not so. They have their own land, their own gardens, their favorite hunting and fishing areas, their family and their friends. And often, the places they are going to are very strange to them. They are living among people that at one time fought against them, worked sorcery on them. Where they go is far from medical help that we provide. For them, it is a real sacrifice and it takes real commitment. I remember Tawa, one of our teachers. He said, "You know, I really don't have to go. I could stay here. But I feel God wants me to go, and that is enough." And so they go. We have 15 trained literacy teachers and 42 Bible teachers. All in all, they are teaching in 12 villages.
Okay, we've picked one of those villages, and taking the actual footage you shot, we've edited together a very brief clip. We'll pick up the story on the last day of the teaching as the teachers dramatize the life of Jesus. Now, there are some believers in the crowd that have come for this day, but most of those you see watching are unbelievers.
They're beating and whipping Jesus, and pretty badly. All these men that are acting out this story have come from previous villages that here they are portraying the soldiers and the people who mock Christ. People have told me that when they see the mockers, it really grates on them. Here's God Himself being shamed. Jesus is now dead, and the soldiers pierce His side with a spear. For many, when they see the blood running out, they begin to connect it with the Old Testament sacrifice of the Lamb. One man told me when he saw the blood, he thought, "Ah, Jesus is the true Lamb. I knew it, I knew it." Here, Jesus is being taken off the cross and put in the tomb. During all this time, one of the teachers is explaining in detail for the audience just what is going on. It is important they understand each segment of the drama. The bark door symbolizes the stone being rolled away. There you see the empty tomb. At the very end, we have Jesus giving the Great Commission, telling us that we are to go into all the world and preach this good news to everybody. The life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that maketh atonement for the soul. And then in Hebrews 9:22, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission or forgiveness of sins. He's teaching on Abraham and Isaac and how a ram was offered in Isaac's place. This really drives home the whole idea of us being sinners under judgment, deserving to be punished, and then Jesus dying, shedding His blood to pay for our sin in our place. Okay, now some of the people began to catch on. The teacher asked them, "If you were to die, what would happen to you?" And he says, "I'd go to heaven." Teacher says, "Why do you say that?" And the man answers, "Because I really believe the death and the blood of Christ has taken my place for my sin." Some of those children have really understood the teaching well. They are really sharp. Even the mock teachers were amazed. They'd come back and say, "Wow, some of these little children really know the answers." Even when some of the questions would stump the adults, these little guys would pop up with the right answer.
And this little guy was busy taking notes on the Bible lesson. He was meticulous. And it just struck me. I don't know that I've ever seen children in our Western churches taking notes like that.
All of a sudden, they run out and just start whooping. There's no cultural equivalence to this. It's just a result of a tremendous emotional release as they realize their sins are forgiven. The condemnation of sin, the guilt, the weight and darkness is gone. And then it just seemed to hit them that all their family that has died in the past has gone into a Christless eternity. The grieving is really genuine. This hasn't happened at every place the teaching occurred, but it did here. This. Today, the true God has been gracious and merciful to us. Today, the grace of God, which is very good, has come to us Moke people, and I believe in Him today. He, Jesus Himself, is our true Lord and Master.
Just like the apostles of old, they are sent, commissioned by the ones who will stay behind and support them. And still, there are many more tribal language groups that have not had a missionary. The men you see here talking to Mark Zook are a delegation that have come looking for missionaries to live with them. They came from a completely different language group. Somehow I believe God intended them to know this good news too. Paul, the apostle, wrote these words 2,000 years ago. They still apply today. Yea, so I've strived to preach the gospel, not where Christ was named, lest I should build upon another man's foundation. But as it is written, to whom he is not spoken of, they shall see, and they that have not heard shall understand.
They came to one of our missionaries and said, we want the missionary to come and live with us. They meant business too. They had brought, and the Moke had said, hey, listen, we want to buy a missionary. Today, the Moke wouldn't even think of buying what they finally got. Because now they know that the message of the Bible is about a free gift of salvation provided through Christ's death on the cross and His resurrection from the grave. That is a bargain they can't help telling others about.
Mark never taught the Moke people this song. He's not sure where they heard it. But our video crew found out that we only had to sing a song once for them to remember the tune. And to this particular tune, they put their own words to glorify God. Our camera crew could not be totally objective as we worked on this video. Just being among these people does affect you. The last day we filmed an old man named Lapide. This old fellow was in such poor health they didn't even know if he would survive the teaching the first time. But he did, and he became a believer. After the Moke teachers began to go to the other villages, he asked if he could go with them to teach the old people, making sure they understood each lesson. And this he has done, climbing mountains, crossing rivers, going from village to village to help teach the older folk. Take a good look at him. The next time you'll see him, you'll be in heaven. Lapide died only a few weeks after this footage was taken. You know, I do believe if the strength of a church was to be judged by its young and its old, then my conclusion would have to be that we should be the learners and the Moke believers should be our teachers.